How's it going, guys? My name is Stone. This is going to be one of the first of many, hopefully, YouTube videos where I review and talk about some of my favorite artists and my favorite genres of music. Today, I am here to talk about one of my favorite debut albums of all time, which is King Crimson's In the Court of the Crimson King. Nice artwork. Now, if you haven't heard this album yet, well, let me tell you, you're really missing out on it. This album contains elements of jazz and classical music while keeping that blues structure that many bands had been influenced by in the late 60s. This album is considered to be one of the most influential and most celebrated progressive rock albums of all time, as it helped codify the genre. I think Rolling Stone magazine had it in their number 2 spot for their top 50 prog albums, and that doesn't really surprise me at all. This album really is a masterpiece, hands down. I like to think that there's a little bit of something for everybody on this album. There's some proto-metal, there's some peaceful balladry, there's a lot of emotion that can be felt through Greg Lake's vocals. And while I feel like every track is pretty different from one another, I think that the album has a consistent flow that only grows stronger throughout its track listing. Yet since these songs are so distinct, I'll be going track by track in order to best describe their qualities. Now, this album begins with what might be considered as their most popular song, 21st Century Schizoid Man. And for a song to come out in the late 60s, it's a pretty heavy track and a strong beginning to this album. Its distorted vocals, dominating drums, and chaotic guitar solo, it just feels like a roller coaster of emotions and a roller coaster of music that never seems to slow down. I especially love the section Mirrors when they have this kind of start-stop approach to the music. And when I first heard that, I was blown away. I really did not expect to hear anything like that. And I'm glad to have, because it caught me by surprise and I love it. It's a great song. Obviously, it's memorable for a reason. It's iconic. But when the song ends, you go into I Talk with the Wind, and you kind of get thrown off because it doesn't even sound like the same band you heard just before. While it is a polar opposite to Schizoid Man, I Talk with the Wind must be one of the most peaceful sounding tracks to have ever come out of progressive rock. I mean, this song is so hard to put into words where it takes you. Just like the qualities to it, the drums, the flute, the vocal harmonies. If there's only one song I could recommend you check out on this album, it would definitely be this one. Highly recommend it. It's bliss. It's simply serene. The next song I would recommend, if I could, which is what comes next, is another staple to King Crimson's catalog, which is Epitaph. Another gorgeous song, much darker than the previous ones, but man, Greg Lake's vocals on this song are just some of the best ever in his career. Just that memorable chorus just gets stuck in your head, and it's stunning. It really is. And I think the instrumentation often gets overlooked because I feel like this is the interludes and the darkness that the music provides really bridges this 9-minute piece so symphonically. It's a great closer to the first side of it, and it's another track I adore so much. So we're 3 for 3 so far. That darkness continues on the next track, which is a bit more controversial, but at the same time, I find it pretty beautiful, which is the track Moonchild. This song begins with an eerie but gorgeous ballad where the mellotron and the vocals, I keep bringing up Greg Lake's vocals, but they're probably the best, like his best work. Yeah, they just cry so beautifully together on this album. But weird thing about it is it wraps up 2 minutes into the song, and then the band begins to challenge musical standards, you could say, and they begin to basically noodle around with their instruments for 10 minutes, mind you. And look, I totally get why people hate the song and despise it, but I don't know. To me, I feel like Moonchild's got something that has got something more than any other track has on this album, which is a quality of uncertainty. I mean, it adds so much more variety to this already diverse album, and it's actually a pretty important track if you think about it, because it would influence where they would go with music down the next few albums, especially with Starless and Bible Black. But once you get through all that, once you get through the madness of Schizoid Man, the peacefulness of I Talk to the Wind, and the nonsense that is Moonchild, we could finally reach the conclusion, which is one of the finest songs King Crimson ever wrote, The Court of the Crimson King. Man, I mean, personally, I think the song takes a similar approach to Epitaph, because I find its chorus to be memorable and the instrumentation to be just as strong. Yet, this track seems to reflect everything that had been seen previous on this album, such as the flute, that gets a little section as well, and then the outro of this song kind of reminds me of the beginning of the album, kind of like Dark Side, where almost you could say it wraps up. Or it continues, I mean. And its loose yet satisfying reprise towards the end of the song, or towards the end of the album, it just makes you look back at the album as a musical journey. And once you reach that point of the song, when those drum fills start kicking back in, it makes you feel like it was all worth it at the end of the day. And I don't know, there's a sense of accomplishment that comes towards listening and finishing this album. It's a masterpiece for a reason. As you can tell, I've had a lot to say about it, and I'm glad to be finally able to get these thoughts out, because I love talking about music and I love to do it more, especially on YouTube. But to summarize my thoughts about this album, or at least my final thoughts, amazing lyrics. Peter Seinfeld, I think, is his name, if I'm saying it correctly. Amazing lyrics. He would continue all the way to Islands. Gorgeous lyrics. Lizard, bit weird, but I'll get into that later. Another album I love, by the way. And the drumming on this album is probably the best. I mean, Bill Bruford is one of their best drummers, but man, this, I can't remember his last name, or his Giles, I know that. I can't remember which of the two is he. But yeah, amazing drumming. I mean, everyone on this album performed very well. Even Robert Fripp, who would become the leader of the band eventually. I would have to rate this album an A+. I like doing letter grades for now, because 8 and 9 kind of get mixed together usually. So yeah, an A+. Obviously, it's an A+. If I don't think it is, surely most people would say. It's an essential piece of music that everyone should hear. I feel like that's the best way to conclude my thoughts on the album, because it really is. You can't really go, I'm not saying you can't go wrong with it, but you could learn something from it, even if you don't like that kind of music. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed my thoughts, my little rant about this album, and I can't wait to hopefully hear what you have to say about it in the comments. I'd love to I'd love to read them and comment back, talk about music with you guys. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good one. I hope you come back for more.